Hello guys, close your eyes and imagine it's early morning in a small stone chamber, lit only by the faint gray light of dawn seeping through a narrow window. The air is cool and still. You lie awake on a simple straw mattress laid on cold wooden boards. For a moment, you just listen to the quiet around you, a distant drip of moisture from the stones, the muffled sounds of a castle slowly stirring to life, and somewhere far off, the faint crow of a rooster. You draw a deep breath. The air smells of aged wood beams above and the mustiness of old straw below. You pull your threadbare wool blanket closer for a final moment of warmth. This little corner is yours alone, a tiny sanctuary before the day begins. Here, in the quiet, you are not yet wearing the painted smile the world expects of you. If you find comfort in these quiet journeys through the past, feel free to like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Also, I'd love for you to share in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. It's always so interesting to see how far and wide these quiet moments reach. Now, in the pale morning light, you rise slowly from your straw bedding. The floor is cold against your bare feet as you sit up. You rub your eyes, still heavy from too little sleep. In the dimness, you can just make out your meager possessions scattered neatly around. A small wooden chest with a rusted latch, a wash basin and ewer, and hanging from a peg on the wall, the colorful motley clothes that you will don for the day's work. Those garments wait for you like a second skin, one that brings laughter to others and hides your true self beneath bright colors and bells. You stand and stretch, feeling the dull ache in your back and knees. Perhaps it's from last night's performance, a tumble or awkward landing while juggling that still lingers as a bruise. You roll your shoulders, hearing them crack softly in the silence. There's no audience to notice your wince this morning. In these first moments of day, you are simply a tired man, and not yet the fool. A faint chill hangs in the room, so you step quickly over to the basin. The stone floor chills the soles of your feet. You pour a little water from the clay pitcher and splash it onto your face. The water is shockingly cold, drawn from the castle well before dawn. It wakes you fully. A small gasp escapes your lips at the icy touch. Droplets trickle down your cheeks and neck. You pat yourself dry with a coarse linen rag. There is no mirror here, but you don't need one. You know your own face by touch and memory. The lines at the corners of your eyes have deepened over the years. Laughter lines, some might say, but just as often carved by fatigue and worry. You run damp fingers through your hair, pushing aside a few unruly strands. Perhaps once, long ago, your hair was kept neatly trimmed. Now it grows a bit wild. It doesn't matter. Soon it will all be hidden under the jester's cap. You move to the wall and lift down your motley attire. The fabric feels familiar in your hands, heavy with patches and carrying the faint scent of old wool and dust. In the half-light, the tunic and breeches look like a patchwork of shadows. Only when the sun hits will the true colors show. You brush your hand over the patches, reds, greens, yellows, and blues, all stitched together in a crazy quilt of fabric. Some patches are faded with age, their colors dulled by years of wear and washing, while others are newer, bright scraps added to mend a tear or replace a worn piece. Each patch has its story. There, on the sleeve, a bit of deep green brocade gifted by a noble lady, one Yuletide after you made her smile during a sad time. Across the chest, a square of sky blue velvet that once trimmed a lord's discarded doublet, salvaged and sewn in to brighten your costume. The leggings are similarly multicolored, one leg in red and yellow diamonds, the other striped in blue and white, and they've been darned at the knees where constant kneeling to bow or scrabble in comedic fear has worn the threads thin. Carefully, you begin dressing. A thin undertunic of linen comes first. clean but well worn, soft against your skin, where the motley's rougher wool might chafe. Then the tunic itself, you pull it over your head and settle it on your shoulders. It fits loosely for ease of movement. A fool must be able to tumble and dance without constraint. The patterned fabric scratches slightly until it warms to your body. Next, you step into your two-toned breeches, fastening them with a simple drawstring at your waist. The leggings hug your calves, one patched knee stiff from an old stain of spilled ale that never fully washed out. As you dress, little bells sewn into the tunic and onto the tips of your shoes give soft chimes. They're quiet now, a delicate tinkle with each movement, but later, in the great hall, even the slightest jostle will set them jingling merrily for all to hear. You pause a moment, standing there half-dressed, listening to that tiny jingle echo in your small chamber. That sound has followed you for years. It announces your approach wherever you go in this castle. There is no sneaking silently when one is a jester. The bells proclaim your presence, whether you wish it or not, a constant reminder of your role. From the peg, you also take up your hat, the fool's hood. It's a curious headpiece, fashioned of the same motley fabric, with two long floppy ears like those of an ass, one on either side. The ends of the ears are weighted with small bells as well, slightly larger ones that will jangle with every nod of your head. Between the ears, atop your crown, rises a cloth crest, shaped a bit like a coxcomb, bright red and exaggerated. This too has a tiny bell at its tip. You turn the hat over in your hands. Along the inner brim, the cloth is stained a darker hue from years of perspiration. Long hours of capering under torchlight have left their mark. For a moment you hesitate. The hat is the final touch that transforms you fully into the king's fool. With it off, you feel almost like yourself. With it on, you become the comic plaything that others expect. But the day is waiting. You draw in a breath, then pull the hood over your head. It fits snugly, framing your face in motley. The long ears flop comically to your shoulders. One bell brushes your cheek, and the faint jingle sounds unusually loud in the morning stillness. Now dressed in your motley, you bend to lace up your leather boots. They are supple but scuffed from much use, the toes curling up slightly, where the cobbler shaped them whimsically long. A tiny bell hangs from each tip as well. You gave in to that fashion, though it means even your footsteps are accompanied by a soft chiming chorus. The boots have patches too, a scrap of tawny leather covering a hole on the left toe, new soles nailed on last spring after you nearly slipped in front of the Duke. As you tie them, you notice a small tear starting along one seam. You'll need to stitch that up later, perhaps by candlelight tonight, to keep the boots serviceable a while longer. New boots would cost more coin than you've seen in months, unless the Lord provides them, and you doubt he will, unless these utterly fall apart. Rising, you pick up a small wooden comb and run it through your hair quickly before tucking your hair fully under the jester's hood. A few rebellious locks poke out around your ears, but it hardly matters. They actually add to the comical dishevelment of your appearance. Next, you reach for a tiny tin pot sitting on the windowsill. Inside is a dab of white face paint, lead white and egg yolk perhaps, left over from last night when you highlighted your face for the banquet's torchlight. You decide whether to apply a little now. On grand occasions, you sometimes paint your face, a ghostly pale mask with rosy spots on the cheeks, to make your expressions more visible and exaggerated in dim halls. But this morning is just a normal day. There may be no great feast, and the white paint is a precious commodity, not to be wasted. With a slight sigh, you set the tin back down. Better to save it for when you truly need to play the clown under bright lights, or before distinguished guests. Still, you do pinch a tiny bit of charcoal from another small vial and gently line your eyes. That trick you learned from an older fool years ago. A bit of darkness around the eyes makes your widening, shocked expressions more dramatic, and even in everyday interactions it gives your face a touch of comic exaggeration that never fully fades. Looking into the basin's water, your makeshift mirror, you see two dark, slightly smudged rings around your eyes. In those eyes lives both the performer and the man, one layered over the other. Dressed and prepared as well as you can be, you take a deep breath and square your shoulders. Motley, bells, hat, and painted accent. The transformation is complete. You shake your arms gently and hear the pleasant jingling that results. To any observer, you are now the very image of a medieval jester, bright, gaudy clothes in mismatched patterns, a fool's hood with long donkey ears flopping, bells at every extremity catching the light and sound, and beneath it all, a quick wry smile that you've learned to wear like another piece of your costume. Yet here, alone in your small room, that smile fades for a moment. Your shoulders slump a little as you think about the day ahead. You close your eyes briefly and offer a silent little prayer, a habit you've taken to each morning. It's a simple plea that you find the wit and energy to get through whatever performances or duties await, and that you do not fall afoul of anyone's temper this day. A jester's prayers are not loud or formal, just a whisper in the dawn, almost lost beneath the faint jingling of the bells on your sleeve as your hands clasp together. In this quiet moment, you allow yourself a flicker of honesty, the faint anxiety fluttering in your stomach. It happens every morning, that tiny uncertainty. Will you be funny enough today? Will you manage to make the sour-faced lord smile? Will you navigate the barbed thicket of courtly moods without pricking yourself? Every day is a new trial, even after all these years. Before stepping out, you gather the few tools of your trade that you keep here. In the corner, leaning against the wall, is your most important prop, your bauble, the mock scepter of the fool. You pick it up reverently. It is a short stick of polished wood, about the length of your forearm, and at its top is mounted a small carved figurehead. By candlelight, you yourself carved that little face from a block of limewood. It is a miniature jester's head, complete with a tiny hood and even tinier bells that you painstakingly attached. Over the years, you've repainted its features when they wore away. Now the face grins back at you with a fixed, playful smile and painted eyes that never blink. Many jesters call this a marat, or simply a bauble. To you, it is almost like a companion, an alter ego you can talk to in the guise of comedy. How many times have you held this wooden fool up and pretended it speaks, using a silly falsetto voice to deliver a punchline or a bit of gossip that you wouldn't dare utter in your own voice? The bauble allows you to say things indirectly, a useful trick when a joke strays near dangerous truths. As you grasp the marat now, its small bell chimes brightly. You imagine for a moment that the little face is greeting you good morning, and despite yourself, you smile a genuine small smile. Good morning, old friend, you whisper back softly, tipping the bauble's tiny hat in a mock salute. In the quiet room, it is a comforting ritual, a man and his wooden companion sharing a private moment before the day's play begins. You also take from the chest a few other items. There is a set of 3 leather juggling balls, scuffed and stained from years of practice. You slip them into a pouch at your waist. One never knows when a bit of juggling might be called for to amuse a bored lord or a restless child in the courtyard. Next to them, you place 2 slender rods that screw together, collapsible juggling clubs of wood. They're not as fine as torches or swords you sometimes juggle during grand feasts, but they're useful for impromptu pratfalls and acts. A small flute, carved from yew wood, also goes into your belt. You're no master musician, but you can play a ditty well enough to accompany a simple song or dance. The flute's wood is smooth against your fingers, polished by years of handling. Finally, you fasten a worn leather pouch on the other side of your belt. Inside jingle a few coins. Very few, just a couple of pennies saved from tips guests have tossed you, and also some little trinkets you use for tricks. A pair of weighted dice for a cheating at dice gag that makes people laugh in surprise, a length of ribbon for sleight of hand, and a few dried peas in small cups for the classic cup and pea trick that fools drunken eyes after dinner. With your motley donned and your tools gathered, you are almost ready to step into the world outside your chamber, the world of court and service and scrutiny. But before you open your door, you take one more moment. Inhaling deeply, you straighten your back and fix a cheerful expression onto your face, practicing it like a mask. A gentle grin, eyebrows arched in a look of perpetual mild amusement. It's an expression that has served you well, putting others at ease and concealing your true feelings. You hold it for a second, feeling the persona settle over you. Yes, that's the face they expect to see, the carefree fool with a grin and a glint in the eye. Inside, your stomach still knots with that quiet morning anxiety, but none of that will show on the surface. The surface belongs to the jester's mask. You lift the simple latch and ease open the heavy wooden door of your tiny room. It creaks softly. The castle is old, and every door protests on its hinges. A cool draft greets you in the corridor outside, carrying with it a medley of smells. Faint wood smoke from the kitchen fires being lit, the tang of grease from last night's torches burnt down to stubs, and the general ancient scent of stone and dust that never quite leaves these halls. The corridor is dim, lit only by what little dawnlight filters in from arrow-slit windows along its length. You step out, close your door behind you, and pause to lock it with a small iron key you keep on a thong around your neck. In truth, there's little of value in your quarters for anyone to steal, but privacy, even the little you have, is a treasure you fiercely guard. As you walk down the corridor, your bells jingle with each step, their sound echoing off the stone walls. The castle is waking up now. Servants carrying bundles of firewood or pails of water pass by quickly, eyes downcast as they hurry to their tasks. One young scullion boy nearly runs into you in his rush, skidding to a stop at the last moment when he hears your bells. He looks up at you, eyes wide. You recognize him, a kitchen lad named Tom, perhaps 10 years old. For a second, you fear you might see mockery or fear in his face. Some servants either scorn you as a clown or hold superstitious dread of the king's fool. But this boy simply gives a shy smile and ducks his head in respect. "Mornin', fool," he mumbles as a greeting, not meaning insult, but simply calling you by what everyone calls you. In fact, you realize with a small pang that some here may not even know your given name, only calling you fool or the jester. Still, the boy's tone is not unkind. You respond by pulling a silly face, crossing your eyes and sticking out your tongue comically. The boy suppresses a giggle, remembering he's meant to be working, and scampers off with his pail clunking at his side. The echo of his brief laughter brings a faint warmth to your heart. A genuine laugh, even a small one, is a nice way to start the day. You continue on, making your way towards the kitchens, drawn by the promise of a bit of bread and maybe a cup of small ale to break your fast. Along the way, you pass by narrow slit windows, and through them you glimpse the world outside. The sun is still low, casting long bluish shadows over the inner courtyard. A thin mist clings to the ground, softening the outlines of the well and the few carts already being loaded with supplies. The sky is a muted morning gray, with the promise of clearer light soon. You catch a whiff of morning dampness, dew on stone, mixing with the distant earthy smell of the stables. It might rain later, or perhaps it's just the residue of the night. Turning down a spiral stair, you descend toward the ground floor. The The stones of the steps are worn into shallow dips by generations of feet. Your hand trails along the wall for balance, and you feel the cold, rough surface under your fingertips. These quiet moments moving through the castle are oddly peaceful. No one is demanding your antics just yet. You almost feel like a ghost drifting silently, apart from the occasional bell jingle, through the dim corridors where tapestries depicting hunts and battles hang in stillness. In one tapestry, a king is shown spear in hand, chasing a stag, and just at the edge, almost hidden among the woven green and gold trees, you spot a tiny figure of a fool with cap and bells dancing as the hunt passes by. You can't help but smile at that. Even in art, someone chose to tuck a jester into the scene, a little nod to the place of your kind in all things. But just like in reality, the fool in the tapestry is on the margins, easily overlooked. At last, the corridor opens out into the kitchens. Immediately, heat and light and noise begin to replace the cold hush of the hallways. Several hearths are already ablaze, even at this early hour. Cooks and their helpers bustle about, kneading dough, plucking fowl, stirring pots of porridge. The light here comes from both flickering orange flames and a few high windows that let in morning sunbeams which catch the haze of flour in the air. The smell envelops you, wood smoke and baking bread, a bit of spilled ale, and an undercurrent of yesterday's onion and garlic skins on the table. It's a hearty, living smell that momentarily makes you forget the chill of the corridors. You step to one side, out of the way of a busy cook carrying a heavy sack of flour, and make your way to a side table where the kitchen staff set aside simple morning fare for servants. There's a round of coarse brown bread, likely yesterday's, and a small barrel of weak ale with a ladle and cups. You tear off a hunk of the bread. It's dense and a little stale, the crust tough. Still, it's nourishment. You pour yourself a half cup of the small beer, thin ale that's safer to drink than water from the river. The cup is wooden, slightly cracked along one rim. You sip and let the yeasty, sour taste wash down the dryness of the bread. The ale is barely alcoholic, just enough to give a faint tang. Mostly it tastes of water and grain, but it's cool and wet, and it fills your belly. Leaning against the wall with your simple breakfast, you watch the kitchen activity. No one pays you much mind here. The cooks are too busy for court formalities, and a jester isn't of much interest unless he's deliberately entertaining them. You nod a greeting to the head cook, a stout woman with flour on her apron. She acknowledges you with a brief smile before barking orders at an apprentice about not burning the pottage. In the kitchens, you're just part of the household scenery, and that's somewhat comforting. You quietly finish your bread, chewing slowly, and savor a last gulp of ale. Setting the wooden cup down, you brush crumbs from your tunic. A few bits cling to the multicolored fabric. You pluck them off and even catch one crumb with your tongue in a playful manner, snapping at it as if it were a fly. A young girl peeling apples nearby notices and giggles softly. You give her a little wink and a wag of your finger as if scolding her for laughing at you, which only makes her giggle more before she returns to her task. Now it's time to see to one of your morning duties. As the court jester, you are mostly known for your performances, but those do not fill every hour of every day. Like many fools, you often help around the household in humbler ways when not performing, a way to earn your keep and stay useful. In your case, one of your tasks is to assist with the Lord's kennels. The Lord of this castle keeps a pack of hunting hounds, great rangy dogs with sleek bodies and powerful lungs for chasing deer and boar. Over time, you've become something of a friend to these animals. Perhaps the master of hounds found it amusing to have the fool helping with the dogs, or perhaps he noticed you had a way with the creatures. Either way, each morning you make your way to the kennels to help feed and tend them. With the warmth of your breakfast sitting comfortably in your belly and your bells jingling softly, you exit the busy kitchen and head out a side door into the courtyard. The morning air greets you with a cool mist that immediately begins to cling to your motley. You shiver briefly until your body adjusts from the kitchen's heat to the outside's chill. The courtyard's paving stones are damp, and your boots squelch slightly on a thin layer of moisture. A few servants hurry past with their cloaks drawn, off to fetch water or run early errands in town. You nod to one or two, but they are preoccupied and scurry along. Across the courtyard near the outer wall stands the kennel, a low timber building attached to the stables. As you walk towards it, the familiar cacophony of barks, yelps, and whines grows louder. The dogs know it's near feeding time and are restless. You smile to yourself. Animals are refreshingly straightforward. They do not care that you are a jester dressed in motley. To them, you are simply a friendly presence who sometimes brings food and occasionally a kind scratch behind the ears. You unbar the wooden gate to the kennel yard and slip inside, closing it behind you. Instantly, a couple of hounds bound up to you, tails wagging furiously. "Hello, my beauties," you coo softly, squatting down to ruffle one dog's ears. A large gray dog licks your hand, and another, a brown spotted one, sniffs curiously at the jingling bells on your hem. You laugh quietly, a genuine laugh that comes easily with these beasts. One particularly enthusiastic young hound rears up, planting two big paws on your chest affectionately. He nearly knocks you backward, but you regain balance and gently push him down. "Easy there, lad, easy," you chuckle, patting his flank. His coarse fur brushes against your fingertips, slightly damp from the mist and rich with the odor of healthy dog. Some might find the kennel smell unpleasant, a musky mix of dog fur, old straw, and yesterday's scraps, but you've grown used to it. In a strange way, it's honest and earthy, far preferable to the cloying perfumes some courtiers wear. The master of hounds, a grizzled man named Osric, is already in the yard, scooping feed from a bucket into several wooden bowls. He glances up as you approach, a faint smile cracking his usually stern face. "Morning, fool," he says in a gruff voice. "Come to check on your cousins, have ye?" It's his little joke, calling the dogs your cousins, implying fools are his beasts. But there's no malice in it, it's just Osric's way. You grin broadly and give an exaggerated bow, sweeping off your floppy-eared hat in a florid gesture. "At your service, Master Osric." "And at yours as well, my lords and ladies," you reply, addressing the dogs as nobility with a playful lilt. One of the older hounds, a wise white-muzzled bitch, tilts her head as if she understands the jest and gives a single bark. "See? Lady Grey approves," you say lightly. Osric chuckles and hands you a second bucket of feed, a mix of soaked oats and kitchen scraps with bits of meat and drippings. Together, the two of you move between the kennels, filling troughs and bowls. The dogs jostle and whine excitedly as you pour their breakfast out. You make a little performance of it, pretending to sample the dog's gruel yourself. Delightful, my compliments to the chef," you declare, smacking your lips dramatically after pantomiming a taste. Osric snorts, and even though he's seen that gag before, it still amuses him enough for a shake of the head and a wry grin. One of the younger stable hands, who's tying a horse nearby, watches and grins as well. It's modest humor, the kind that eases the monotony of morning chores. With the food distributed, the hounds set to eagerly, their noisy eating filling the yard with slurps and crunches. You lean on the fence for a moment, watching them. As the frenzy dies down, a calm falls over the kennel as each animal focuses on its bowl. You feel a sense of peace in this moment. The sky is brightening now. Shafts of soft morning sun begin to break through the clouds, illuminating the fine mist in the air like floating silver. A ray of sunlight catches the tiny bells on your sleeve, making them glint warmly. You gently jiggle your arms so they chime, and a few dogs perk up their ears at the sound, looking at you with heads cocked in curiosity and tails wagging slowly. Osric heads off to fetch fresh water for the trough, leaving you momentarily alone with the hounds. You crouch down by the fence and scratch one of the dogs, a mottled old hound named Brute, behind the ears as he finishes his meal. He leans into your hand, panting happily. "There's a good lad," you murmur. In moments like this, you can shed the role of fool entirely for a short while. The dogs see you not as a clown, not as a servant to tease, but simply as a friendly presence. Some days, the kennels are the only place you feel completely accepted and at ease. As you give Brute one last pat, your mind wanders. Perhaps you're thinking back to how you came to have this life. Many jesters, you know, were plucked from humble beginnings. You yourself, well, memory is a hazy thing this early, but you recall being a curious, lively child in a poor village not unlike many others. You were always small and quick, always the one to make a witty remark that set others laughing, sometimes earning you a cuff on the ear from a parent or priest for your impertinence. In a hard world, humor was your shield and gift. You learned early that a sharp tongue and a quick tumble could earn you a bite to eat or diffuse a bully's wrath. Perhaps it was at a local fair that a passing noble first noticed you. You'd climbed on a barrel to mimic the town preacher's droning voice, making the villagers roar with laughter. Instead of scolding, the nobleman tossed you a silver penny. That memory brings a faint smile, a moment when you realized your antics had value. One thing led to another. As a youth, you joined a wandering troupe of minstrels and performers for a time, learning from older jugglers, storytellers, and mimes. Life on the road was rough and uncertain, sleeping in barns, traveling through mud and rain from one market fair to the next, performing in village squares for whatever coins the peasants could spare. You remember nights shivering under wagons, hungry, and days when an unappreciative crowd meant you went without a meal. But there were also moments of camaraderie around campfires where fellow performers, musicians, puppeteers, acrobats shared tricks of the trade and stories of great courts they'd glimpsed. It was during those wandering years that you truly honed your skills. You learned to play the flute from a one-eyed minstrel who swore he'd once entertained a queen. You practiced juggling by the light of the moon, tossing apples or stones until you could keep 3, then 4 objects in the air with ease. An old tumbler, his joints stiff with age, taught you how to perform a clumsy-looking somersault that's actually quite safe, a fool's fall to make the audience gasp and then laugh when you popped up unhurt. Most importantly, you learned the art of timing, when to deliver the punchline, when to pause for effect, how to read the mood of a crowd like one reads the changing weather. Those lessons served you well on the day you first came to this castle. You recall that time. You and a few of your troupe had been invited to perform at the wedding feast of a minor noble's daughter here. The pay promised was modest, but the exposure, performing before lords and ladies, was a chance for bigger things. The great hall had shimmered with candlelight and rich tapestries that night, intimidating in its splendor. You had felt your heart hammering under your motley as you stepped forth to do your routine. But adrenaline and practiced ease carried you through. You juggled flaming torches to gasps of delight. You sang a bawdy comic song that made the ladies titter behind their fans. And you traded cheeky banter with the knight in the front row, cleverly walking the knife's edge of not truly offending him. When you imitated the lord of the manor's own pompous manner, just a gentle parody, and even the lord himself burst into laughter, you knew you had them. That night, as the feast ended, the castle's lord, your lord now, approached you. He pressed a few coins into your hand, far more than agreed upon, and offered you a position in his household as his personal fool. The rest of your troop moved on the next morning without you, waving wistfully. You stayed, trading the freedom of the roads for the security and relative comfort of life in a noble court. It was a turning point, one that gave you a bed to sleep in and regular meals, but also bound you to a single lord's fortunes and whims. A wet nose nudges your hand, pulling you from your reverie. One of the hounds has finished breakfast and is seeking a bit of attention. You chuckle and rub the dog's head. Daydreaming again, are ya? Comes Osric's voice as he returns with a bucket of fresh water. These mutts will be snoring away in a bit, and there you are wool gathering. I was merely communing with my peers, Master Osric, you reply lightly. We fools must discuss matters of great importance, such as chasing imaginary rabbits in our sleep. You tap the side of your head as if sharing a grand secret with the nearest hound. Osric snorts in amusement and shakes his head, setting the water down for the dogs to lap. Duty done for now. You take your leave of the kennels. On to further follies, you announce to the dogs with a theatrical flourish. A few look up, ears perking as if understanding. Pushing open the kennel gate, you step back into the courtyard, leaving Osric and his helpers to settle the hounds for the day. The castle courtyard is livelier now than it was at dawn. The mist has mostly lifted, revealing the aged stones of the walls and the timbers of outbuildings, slick with dew. Servants crisscross the yard carrying messages or fetching water from the well. 2 guards in chainmail stand by the main gate, spears in hand, chatting idly as they stamp their feet to shake off the morning chill. You see a cluster of maidservants headed to the laundry with baskets of soiled linens balanced on their hips, gossiping quietly among themselves. As you pass them, one notices you and whispers to her friend, causing a few subdued giggles. You catch only a snippet, the fool, and some glances your way. It's impossible to tell whether they're laughing at your bells jingling or recalling some jest you performed recently. You give them an overly elegant bow, flourishing your bauble as if it were a nobleman's cane, and that earns open laughter. One covers her mouth, saying, "Oh, you are silly." They move on, and you straighten, the grin on your face lingering a moment, then softening into a more neutral expression as you continue across the courtyard. This is how it is. Everywhere you go, you draw looks and smiles, sometimes fond, sometimes derisive. You are a curiosity, a walking splash of color in an otherwise drab world of duty and hierarchy. People treat you in peculiar ways. The stable boys might slap your back as a friend, whereas they'd never dare touch a knight so familiarly. A knight might condescendingly toss you a coin or a half-eaten apple as one would to a beggar, or give a half-hearted compliment he'd never give a common groom. Ladies of the court occasionally treat you almost like a pet, indulging your boldness as one tolerates a mischievous lapdog. And sometimes, when they forget themselves, people speak freely around you, as if the fool does not truly count or carry tales. So you've overheard many a whispered secret or scheme while you seemed busy juggling or tuning your lute. Yes, moving between these social cracks is both blessing and curse. You have a strange kind of access to all, yet belonging to none. You stop by a trough to wash your hands, scrubbing off the bit of dog feed, and drool with clean water. The reflection staring up at you in the trough surface ripples is that of a motley clad stranger with a bright hood and painted eyes. For just an instant, you see yourself the way someone else might, a fantastical figure jingling through a gray stone fortress. It's almost surreal. The image blurs as you disturb the water and you wipe your hands on a scrap of cloth. Looking up, you see that the castle's main doors are opening. Servants are beginning to sweep the great hall and prepare for the day's business. Soon the lord and lady will descend for the morning meal, and the day's official proceedings will commence. Petitions from tenants, plans for the hunt, receiving any visiting dignitaries. You know your presence may be required to lighten these occasions. The Lord sometimes asks you to stand by during dull meetings in case he needs a jest to break the tension, or just to entertain him when he grows bored of talk of crops and taxes. Not yet summoned, you linger a moment more in the open air. You take a deep breath and smell the faint sweetness of hay from the stables, mixed with the sharp note of chimney smoke now rising from the hall's kitchens. A pair of swallows flit overhead, chirping as they dart across the pale sky. For a heartbeat, you envy their freedom to come and go, to nest under the eaves and not be beholden to any master. But the thought passes like the shadow of a cloud. Your path is here, at least for today, and you must walk it. Before heading into the hall, you quickly take stock of yourself and your equipment one more time. You adjust your jester's hood so that it sits comfortably. It had slipped a bit after the dog's enthusiastic greetings, leaving one of the donkey ears askew. Now it stands upright again, comically proud with its bell tinkling as you pat it. You run a hand down your tunic, brushing off a bit of dust and a stray dog hair or two. You feel the reassuring weight of your tools at your belt. The marat, the juggling balls, the flute, everything is in its place. Externally, you look the part of the carefree fool, ready to amuse at a moment's notice. Internally, you brace yourself. The quiet of the morning is about to give way to the bustle and scrutiny of court life. Entering the great hall, you find it already humming with the day's activities. The hall is a vast chamber of stone, with high arched beams overhead, darkened by years of smoke. At this hour, the tapestries on the walls, scenes of famous battles and hunts, are lit by angled sunlight that streams through the upper windows, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the air. A pair of servants rush by with brooms, sweeping rushes and last night's remnants from the floor, while another places fresh green herbs among the new rushes to sweeten the air. At the far end, on a raised dais, stands the high table where the Lord and his family dine and hold court. The Lord is already seated in his great carved chair, breaking his fast on bread, cheese, and a cup of wine. His lady sits beside him, delicately nibbling a pear. A few other high-ranking members of the household are present this morning. You notice the bishop of a nearby diocese, an austere man in a black cassock and cap, seated to the Lord's right, likely here to discuss church matters or tithes. On the Lord's left is his steward, Sir Baldwin, a stiff-necked older knight who oversees the estate's daily management. A handful of lesser nobles, perhaps staying as guests or here for petitions, sit lower at the table. Scattered around on benches below the salt are other members of the household, knights, the master-at-arms, a few courtiers in waiting. You quietly make your way toward the front, weaving through clusters of attendants and petitioners. No formal summons was given for you, but you know to be present whenever the Lord is holding audience, in case your particular services are needed. A few eyes follow you as you move. Your colorful attire inevitably draws attention among the sober-colored tunics and gowns of others. Some of the castle folk give you friendly nods or smiles. Others, like Sir Baldwin, cast you cool glances before returning to their conversations. Reaching the dais, you take up your customary place just to the side of the high table, near a pillar. This spot is a good vantage. You are close enough that the Lord can easily see or beckon you, but not so close as to presume a seat among the nobles. You stand, marat in hand, trying to strike a balance in your posture between attentive servant and merry ornament. At times like this, you are almost like a piece of living furniture, an amusing decoration in the court's pageantry, until called into action. The Lord, a balding man with keen gray eyes and a well-fed belly, catches sight of you and gives a slight approving nod between sips of his spiced wine. He has been your patron for several years, and thankfully he is a man who generally enjoys laughter and does not anger easily at jests. Still, you know he has his limits and moods. You bow respectfully to him and his lady, doffing your jester's cap in a florid gesture. The donkey ears of your hood flop comically, and the lady hides a small smile behind her hand. The bishop, sitting next to the Lord, pointedly does not smile. He merely purses his lips, as though the very presence of a fool is something distasteful. You sense the tension there. High clergy often regard jesters with suspicion or outright disdain, seeing your merry-making as frivolity or even sin. You lower your eyes humbly in the bishop's presence, careful not to appear too brazen. Servants move about pouring wine and clearing plates as the breakfast concludes. The Lord dabs his mouth with a linen napkin and begins speaking with the steward about the day's matters, a dispute over boundary stones between two villagers, the accounts of the grain stores, plans for an upcoming fair at Michaelmas. You remain nearby, listening but silent, hands clasped over your bauble. This is a time to be present but unobtrusive, as the matters are serious. The bishop interjects at one point, his voice droning and deep, commenting on the need for contributions to the church's new almshouse. His eyes flicker to you as he speaks of frivolities that distract people from piety. Though he doesn't name you, you feel subtly targeted. In these troubled times, the bishop intones, it is ever more important to turn our minds to prayer and refrain from excesses of mirth and foolishness. His gaze lingers disapprovingly on the jingling bells at your collar. Your fingers tighten on your marat, but you keep your face neutral, pleasantly blank. The Lord, sensing the slight, merely gives a non-committal grunt and changes the subject to the success of last year's harvest. You remain silent, as is prudent. However, as the discussion flows, an opportunity for levity soon arises. Sir Baldwin, reading from the account rolls, drones about numbers of sheep and measures of wheat. It's terribly dry, and the Lord's eyelids are beginning to droop. A few other listeners stifle yawns. The steward continues, and 57 bushels from the lower east fields, at 4 pence the bushel, that makes He pauses, calculating. Sensing the moment, you gently step forward into the open space near the table and speak in a clear, light voice. 57 bushels, Sir Baldwin? Why, I do hope you counted the ears of grain, too. The bishop here might say not a sparrow falls without the Almighty knowing, and not a grain grows but by his grace, should we count them all, and tithe each 10th ear to the church? You place a finger to your temple, as if this is a most serious suggestion. A few of the assembled knights chuckle. The steward furrows his brow, unsure if he's being mocked. The bishop fixes you with a cold stare, one eyebrow raised at your impudence. For a heartbeat, you worry you've overstepped. But then the Lord lets out a hearty chortle, breaking the tension. Ha, if we tithe each ear, my friend, you'll be counting grain until next harvest, he says to the bishop, who forces a thin smile. Buoyed by the Lord's amusement, you press your hands together piously and reply in a humble tone, "Just so, your excellency, a task for a holier man than I. Alas, I'd lose count after 2. You hold up 2 fingers and then cross your eyes as if even that number strains your wits. The Lord guffaws, and even the lady bites back a laugh at your silly expression. The steward sighs, but you notice a faint curl at the corner of his mouth. Perhaps he's relieved to be spared more arithmetic recitation. The bishop, however, looks down his nose at you. There is a time and place for levity, he says sternly, and a time for sober matters. His voice cuts through the chuckles. You immediately bow your head contritely. "Just so, your excellency," you say in an exaggeratedly meek tone. "Forgive my interruption. Sober matters, yes. I shall be as silent as the grave." To emphasize, you mime locking your lips with a key and tossing it away, then stand stock still with an absurdly somber face. This pantomime draws renewed laughter from around the hall, none louder than the Lord's own guffaw. The bishop's cheeks flush and he turns away in annoyance, but he lets the matter drop, unwilling to spar with a fool and risk looking humorless. The steward resumes his accounting, mercifully summarizing to finish quickly. Business continues. A pair of peasants are brought in to petition the Lord about a grazing right, and you remain a silent, watchful presence. During this period of quiet, your eyes wander over the hall. Near the back, a few guards stand at ease, and some servants quietly carry out empty dishes. On one side, a tapestry depicts King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, and right beneath it, a real spider has spun a web catching motes of dust in the light, a tiny, unnoticed drama playing out while grand events are discussed. You often notice such small details. Perhaps it's the part of you that observes the world quietly while wearing the mask of folly. As the petitioners drone on about whose cow strayed where, the Lord begins to grow visibly bored again. He casts a sidelong glance at you, a subtle signal you've come to recognize. Stepping forward deftly, you intervene to lighten the mood. You casually toss one of your juggling balls from your pouch into the air. It arcs up, drawing eyes. Then you catch it on the back of your hand instead of your palm. "My lord," you say innocently, speaking of wandering cows, "did I ever tell you about the time I tried to milk a bull?" A ripple of titters spreads. Even the peasants stop, wide-eyed, not sure if they should laugh in this august company. The Lord grins. "I don't believe you have, fool, but I suspect we're about to hear it." Encouraged, you launch into a brief comic anecdote, an obviously absurd, made-up tale of how, mistaking a bull for a cow in your youthful foolishness, you got chased across 3 fields. As you speak, you juggle the ball in looping patterns, sometimes bouncing it off your elbow or rolling it across your shoulders for a flourish. The physical comedy underlines the story. You puff your cheeks to mimic the angry bull's snorting. You leap aside as if dodging horns. The hall fills with laughter, genuine, relaxed laughter. The petitioners, the knights, even the steward covers a smile with his hand when you describe diving headlong into a pond to escape the imaginary bull. By the story's end, the mood in the hall is considerably brighter. The Lord claps his hand on the table, wiping tears of mirth from his eyes. "Enough, enough. You'll have me in stitches before midday," he proclaims. He then turns to the peasants and, still smiling, resolves their dispute swiftly and generously, his good mood clearly enhanced by the levity you provided. As those business matters wind down, the Lord motions to you. "Come, fool, sit here a moment." This is a small but significant gesture. He's inviting you to perch on the edge of the dais near his seat, an informal mark of favor. You humbly approach and sit cross-legged on the floor at his feet, at a slight distance, not exactly at the table, but close enough to converse quietly. He pours a bit of his own wine into a spare cup and hands it down to you. "Wet your whistle," he says kindly. You accept the cup with a grateful bow of your head. The wine is of good quality, spiced with cinnamon and cloves. It warms your throat as you sip. Not often are you offered the same drink as the nobility. Often you drink the thin, small ale with servants. This small kindness from the Lord reminds you that he does value you, at least for now, while you please him. As you nurse the wine, the hall's focus shifts. The official business concludes, and people begin to disperse about their tasks. The bishop rises to go perform a blessing for some departing travelers. The steward goes off to arrange supplies. The Lord remains seated, basking in the afterglow of laughter and the satisfaction of a morning's work done. He leans back and regards you thoughtfully. For a moment, it is just you, the Lord, and his lady listening in. "You've a nimble wit this morning," the Lord says softly so others might not overhear. "Just be careful with the good bishop. He's a dour sort, and not one to poke too hard." You nod, lowering your voice in reply. "Aye, my lord, I tread as lightly as I can, though with him even a feather's weight of humor feels heavy." The lady suppresses a quiet laugh at that, covering it with a sip of her drink. The Lord smirks, then speaks more seriously. "Truth be told, I keep you around as much for honesty as for laughter. That bishop would never tell me outright I'm being dull or stubborn, but you manage to hint at it under a joke. It is useful. He says the last word quietly, and you catch a rare glimmer of trust and candor in his eyes. This is one of those subtle moments where you realize you serve not just as an entertainer, but oddly, as a kind of safety valve for truth. The paradox of your position stands out clearly. As the fool, you can say things under the cover of jest that others dare not. It's a power of sorts, and the wise Lord knows how to use it. However, that power is precarious. One misjudgment, one step too far, and it could all come crashing down on your head. The memory of a story flickers across your mind, the tale of a French jester named Triboulet, who served King Francis. You've heard how Triboulet once offended the queen, gravely with a joke, and the enraged king ordered him executed, only by pleading cleverly, "Good sire, let me choose the manner of my death. I choose to die of old age." Did he earn banishment instead of the sword? You recall the chill that went through you when you first heard that tale from a traveling bard. It's a fool's cautionary fable now, the razor's edge you all walk. Your own narrow escapes come to mind. There was that evening last winter when you made a quip about the treasury being as empty as the Baron's wine cup, not realizing the Baron himself stood behind you. The Baron did not laugh. In fact, he demanded you be whipped for your impertinence. The Lord had to smooth things over with a half-serious assurance that you would be punished. And indeed, you spent a cold night in the dungeon below as a token chastisement, sitting shivering in straw behind iron bars until dawn, listening to the scurrying of rats and contemplating your folly. The next day, the Lord released you with merely a stern word, and the welts on your pride healed. But you never forgot the damp stink of that cell, or how your jester's motley provided little warmth against the chill stone. As you sip the last of the wine, the echoes of that memory make you shudder inwardly. You glance towards a certain heavy oak door on the side of the hall, the one leading down to the dungeons. It stands closed now, dark iron hinges against dark wood, seeming innocuous. But you know too well what lies beneath, and how close you came to languishing there longer. It's a sobering reminder. Your place at the table is by grace, and that grace can be rescinded at any hint of true offense. Just then, a fanfare of trumpets from the courtyard breaks your reverie, likely a group of visiting nobles or merchants arriving for midday. The Lord sits up, duty calling once more. He gives you a pat on the shoulder, an unusual gesture that causes a few nearby servants to raise their brows in surprise. "Off with you now," he says, not unkindly. "I'll want you fresh and ready to entertain at supper this eve. We expect a few guests." You nod and rise to your feet. "As you wish, my lord." With a quick flourish, a spin on your heel that makes your cloak flare and bells ring cheerfully, you add lightly, "I shall save my best jests for the feast." The lady smiles at you in parting, and the Lord has already turned his attention to the newcomers being announced. You slip away as the formalities resume, glad to leave the center of attention for now. Moving through the hall toward a side door, you feel a mixture of relief and fatigue. Performing even these small jests and maintaining your cheery persona through the morning's politics has taken a measure of energy. The spiced wine left a pleasant warmth in you, but you know better than to indulge more during the day. A clear head is needed for the evening's performance, especially with guests expected. You exit the hall by a side door, finding yourself again in the quieter passages of the castle. The air here feels cooler after the warmth of the hall fires, and you take a deep breath. The scent is of stone and a hint of polish from a servant recently oiling the woodwork. You decide to take a short respite, perhaps step out into the inner garden for a little fresh air, or retreat to your chamber to practice a tune, or simply collect yourself. On the way toward the garden, you pass by the chapel. Its door is ajar, and you hear the low murmur of a prayer inside, likely the bishop or the castle's resident chaplain performing a ritual or private devotion. You slow your steps reflexively, not wanting your jingling to disturb the sanctity within, but as you quietly tiptoe past, a figure emerges. Brother Bernard, the castle's elderly priest. He is a kindly soul who tends to the spiritual needs of the servants and often gives you a sympathetic smile, though he occasionally chides you if your jokes grow too irreverent. Today the old priest looks at you with gentle concern. "My son," he calls softly. You pause and bow your head respectfully. Brother Bernard steps closer. "I trust the morning went well. I heard laughter from the hall. You were in fine form, I take it." His tone is kind, but you sense something else in his eyes, perhaps a hint of worry. Brother Bernard has often counseled you to take care of your soul amidst all the jests. You recall how once he gently admonished you after you performed a particularly bawdy song about a nun and a miller. He was concerned for the example it set and for your own penance. "It went as well as can be, brother," you reply softly. "I kept things merry enough without, I hope, offending our Lord or the Lord." You add the little play on words deliberately, and Brother Bernard gives a soft chuckle. "Mind that the Almighty is laughing with you and not at you," the priest says, not severely but as a fatherly reminder. "There are those who say fools have no place in God's plan, but I believe even merriment has its season, so long as it is kind and does not lead others to sin." You nod. "This is an old refrain between you two. I try, brother. I truly do. I know some of my jests walk the line. I will confess any overstep." You mean it. You've knelt in the dim light of that chapel more than once, whispering the sin of a crude joke or a blasphemous pun to Brother Bernard, receiving a small penance of prayers or fasting. It's always a strange feeling, confessing the sin of doing precisely what you are employed to do. Brother Bernard pats your shoulder. "Go with God, then. And remember, if your heart grows heavy under the cap and bells, you are always welcome to sit quietly in the chapel." He glances at the bells on your sleeve. "I dare say even our Lord would forgive a little jingling interruption." You smile and thank him sincerely. The priest returns to his chapel, and you continue on your way, his words lingering. It is true, at times, especially after a particularly irreverent performance, or when you've mocked something sacred to amuse the crowd, you feel a pang of guilt or fear for your soul. You recall theological tracts Bernard once paraphrased to you. Some zealots write that a jester's laughter is the devil's tool, that fools and motley serve the prince of darkness by encouraging frivolity and blasphemy. The thought always sends a chill through you. In those moments, you do pray, quietly and fervently, that your intentions to bring a bit of joy or relief are understood by heaven and not counted against you on Judgment Day. Brother Bernard's more moderate stance that God can smile too is a comfort, and you cling to that hope. Stepping out into the small walled herb garden adjacent to the chapel, you relish a moment of tranquility. The sun is higher now, casting steady light on neat rows of sage, thyme, and rosemary used by the kitchen. Bees drone lazily among the lavender bushes. You seat yourself on a low stone bench beneath a trellis entwined with climbing roses. A few blossoms, late in the season, still scent the air faintly sweet. Here, away from watching eyes, you allow your face to relax. The smile slips away, your jaw slackens, your brows unknit. You close your eyes and tilt your head back against the stone wall, feeling the warmth of sunlight on your skin. The bells on your hat and shoes fall silent as you sit utterly still. In this quiet, you simply breathe. Fatigue tugs at you. You've been up since before dawn and already played many roles: the obedient servant, the quick wit, the gentle clown, the counselor in jest. It's a relief to let all that drop for a short while. A bird perched on the garden wall trills a few notes, and you listen, letting the simple melody wash over your mind, clearing it. Memories float up unbidden in the solitude. You think of your family, faces now blurred by years. You left home so young to follow the wandering minstrels, chasing the promise of adventure, or perhaps fleeing the specter of hunger that always loomed in your childhood. Your mother's stern warnings, stop your foolery and get to work, she'd often scold when you imitated the village elder behind his back, echo in your mind ironically. Did she ever imagine her foolish son would make a living being exactly what she feared, a fool? You wonder if she'd be proud that you serve a great lord, or ashamed that you serve him as a clown. That thought pricks a tender place in your heart. You rarely allow yourself to dwell on family or what-ifs, but here in the gentle hush of midday, it surfaces. There's a pang of loneliness. You have no wife, no children. A few times you'd thought fondly of a kitchen maid or a tavern girl, but what future could you offer? To be a court jester is not exactly a stable or respected position for starting a family. Besides, you are often on the move with the Lord's travels, or busy at unpredictable hours. The women who smile at you usually do so in jest or affection, as one might for a clever pet. None see you as a man to build a home with. It is something you quietly accepted long ago, but acceptance doesn't remove the sting entirely. Sometimes at feasts, as you caper and provoke gales of laughter, you catch sight of a couple at the tables, perhaps a knight and his wife, sharing a private, warm smile or a touch of hands, and an ache wells in you for something so ordinary and yet so out of reach for you. Your thoughts drift to others of your profession. There are not many who truly understand the life of a fool, except another fool. In your travels and years at court, you've met a few. There was Will, a jester in a neighboring baron's court, who visited during a tournament and spent an evening trading riddles with you in the kitchens, while the high lords feasted. He was witty and sharp, but later confided that his master had a cruel streak and once had him beaten for failing to amuse on a dark day. Will spoke with a hollow laugh, as if it were a joke on himself that he had to wear padding under his motley some days to hide the bruises. You wonder where Will is now. You heard whispers that his baron fell ill and died last year. Perhaps Will was cast out when the new lord came, or perhaps he managed to stay. You don't know. There was also a dwarf woman, Bellina, who was kept as a fool at a duke's court, where you once traveled with your lord. She had a sharp tongue that delighted the courtiers, and a repertoire of ribald songs. She also had the saddest eyes you'd ever seen. Over a quiet cup of wine in a corridor after entertaining, she admitted to you that she often felt more like an ornament or a plaything than a person, dressed up in fine silks, but given no more respect than a trained monkey. The duke's children would ride on her back for fun, tugging her hair. She laughed about it as she told you, but you saw the hurt just beneath. Being a female fool was no kinder a fate than a male one, perhaps lonelier in its own way. You recall giving her a gentle kiss on the cheek in parting, surprising both her and yourself, then making a silly joke to cover the moment. You never saw Bellina again, but you think of her now and then, hoping she found some contentment. The existence of women like Bellina or others. You've heard of the famous Jane the Fool, who served Queen Mary of England, a rare woman in the trade, reminds you that while mostly a brotherhood, the world of jesters has a few sisters as well, though they often go unmentioned. All fools, regardless of gender, share the same precarious position and odd half-respect. A honeybee buzzes close, circling a rose bloom near your head. You open your eyes and watch it, grateful that the creature pays you no mind, beyond regarding you as another bit of garden scenery. In this moment, you almost feel you could be anyone, a gardener, a monk, just a weary soul catching a rest, with no bells, no jokes, No expectations. The motley on your back is just cloth, after all. Were a stranger to walk in now, without context, perhaps they'd see not a fool, but simply a man lost in thought. After a time, the sun grows a bit hot on your cheek, and you decide you've indulged in enough idleness and introspection for now. There is still the evening to prepare for. Rising from the bench, you stretch your arms and roll your shoulders. A slight stiffness in your left knee reminds you of last night's caper when you jumped down from the high table to the floor to laughter. You landed a tad poorly. You'll need to rub some ointment into it later, or it might trouble your dancing tonight. You brush a few crushed rosemary leaves off your breeches and find, to your amusement, that a small rose petal had fallen and stuck to one of the bells on your hat's ear. Gently, you pluck it off and twirl the soft pink petal between your fingers. It's delicate and fragrant. You press it in your palm. Perhaps you will keep it, if only until it wilts, as a tiny reminder of this peaceful moment. Slipping the petal into your pocket, you exit the garden and make your way back through the corridors. The castle is in full swing now. Preparations for the evening's feast are evident. You pass a pair of servants carrying bundles of fresh rushes and flowers to strew in the hall for decoration. In the kitchen, where you peek briefly, the staff are in a controlled frenzy plucking geese and grinding spices. The head cook is yelling for someone to fetch more butter. A scullery maid rushes past with a stack of gleaming pewter plates. The smells of raw meat, herbs, and smoke intermingle in anticipation of the lavish supper to come. Up in your chamber once more, you decide to practice a few tunes and verses for the night. You never want to repeat the same performances too often, or else the novelty wears thin for your audience. So you close your door and retrieve your lute from beneath your bed. It's a simple instrument, a bit battered around the edges, but lovingly maintained. You sit by the small window where light falls and strum a few chords, quietly tuning the strings until they form a harmonious chord that pleases your ear. You have a new ditty in mind, one you've been composing in bits and pieces over the last week. It's a playful ballad about a fox who sneaks into a feast, pretending to be a noble guest, wearing a stolen cape. It's a nonsense story on the surface, but tucked within are gentle jabs at certain courtly behaviors, vanity, gluttony, and so forth, all masked by the allegory of animals. These kinds of songs are usually well received. The clever ones appreciate the wit, while others just enjoy the silly tale of a fox dancing with a hen. You test your voice softly, singing the first lines. On a moonlit night in a hollow tree, Red Fox brewed ale for a merry spree. He combed his whiskers and donned a cape, crept into a feast for the jaws of sleep. Your voice fills the small room quietly, a bit raspy at first until you warm up. The lute accompanies with a cheerful, trotting melody. You adjust a few words considering how they'll land. Perhaps instead of jaws of sleep, you'll say shadows deep, for easier rhyme with a later line you have in mind about creep. As you rehearse, you glance out the window at the afternoon sky. A few clouds, tinged gold at the edges, are slowly drifting. Hours remain before sunset. A pang of nervous excitement goes through you for the evening's performance. Even after years, the butterflies never fully leave. Perhaps that's good. It keeps you sharp, reminds you not to become complacent. After practicing the song a few times until you're comfortable, you run through some juggling patterns with your leather balls, just to keep nimble. In the privacy of your room, you try a more advanced trick you've been working on, tossing 2 balls with one hand and one with the other, crisscrossing them in mid-air. The first few attempts, you drop a ball. It thuds to the floor and rolls under your bed. Determined, you try again and manage several rounds of the pattern. It's not quite stage ready. You won't attempt it tonight, unless you feel particularly confident. Better to stick with what you know will draw applause. Finally, You spend a few minutes polishing your Marat's little face and tightening the strings that attach its bells. The tiny Jester puppet on the stick grins eternally at you. You sometimes wonder if that's what you look like to others, a fixed grin, an object of entertainment. You shake off the thought and give the Marat a playful whirl in the air. It catches a sunbeam and its bell rings clear. The afternoon passes thus in solitary preparation. No one disturbs you, save a brief knock from a page bringing a message that the evening feast is delayed by an hour. Apparently one noble's party has been slowed by muddy roads. That suits you fine. A bit more time to refine your act and rest your limbs. As dusk approaches, you light a small tallow candle on your table. The flame flickers, casting dancing shadows on the stone wall. You carefully lay out a slightly cleaner jerkin of motley. The one you wore in the morning now has a small tear at the armpit and a faint grease stain from lunch you didn't notice before. With needle and thread, you mend the tear as best you can. The stitches are a little uneven. You're no master tailor, but it will hold. You think of the castle tailor, Master Gervais, who occasionally refits older clothing for you from the cast-offs of other servants or family. He's polite, but always presents you with the bill for materials to hand to the steward, a bill which, in truth, comes out of your wages if the Lord doesn't explicitly cover it. Money, you sigh. You receive a small regular stipend by the Lord's grace, enough for trifles and perhaps to send a coin or two to that younger sister back in your home village. You do so from time to time anonymously, but coin has a way of disappearing, a replacement for a cracked lute string here, a round of ale shared to stay in good favor with others there, a token bribe to a guard for a tidbit of gossip elsewhere, and yes, paying the tailor for thread and cloth. You recall with a frown that you currently owe Master Gervais a few pence for the last bells he affixed to your doublet. He pressed you about it 2 days ago, and you promised payment soon. If tonight's guests are generous, maybe you can earn a tip or gift to cover that. It's a small worry, but it nags at you. You've learned through bitter experience never to accumulate too many debts. A jester who can't pay his way might find his welcome running out. Dressing in the fresher motley, this one a pattern of bright blue and red halves, with parti-colored sleeves, you feel as ready as you'll ever be. The castle around you grows lively as torches are lit, and the aromas of the feast waft through the corridors. Roast meat spiced and sizzling, fresh bread, the whiff of a spiced pudding being prepared. Your stomach rumbles slightly. You ate little since the morning bread and ale, and likely won't eat fully until after performing tonight. But you're used to that. A hungry jester makes for sharper jokes. You tell yourself wryly. You gather your props for the evening. You sling your lute by its strap across your back. You tuck a few extra juggling balls into your pocket for later. You make sure your Marat is at hand, the little face freshened with a touch of paint earlier to ensure its grin is vivid in candlelight. Before leaving, you extinguish the candle on your table to save it. In the sudden dimness, you catch your reflection one last time in your shard of mirror. By the flicker of the single lamp you've left lit, your face is half in shadow, half painted fool, a curious duality. Wish me luck, you whisper, whether to yourself, to the little wooden jester in your hand, or to any kindly spirit listening. Then you straighten up, set your shoulders back, and head out to face the expectant night. Night falls fully as you make your way back to the great hall for the evening feast. The castle is ablaze with torchlight and candles. Golden light spills from the arched windows and open doorways into the darkening courtyard. Stepping into the hall now is like entering a different world from this morning's sober assembly. The space has been transformed. Fresh rushes scented with herbs carpet the floor, tapestries gleam in the warm glow, and dozens upon dozens of candles twinkle from chandeliers and wall sconces. Long tables are laden with platters of roasted meats, pheasant, pork, gleaming brown geese, interspersed with trenchers of bread, bowls of fragrant stewed vegetables, and pyramids of autumn fruits. The aroma is rich and overwhelming. Spiced wine, roasting garlic, honey glaze, and wood smoke from the roaring great hearth where whole haunches still turn on spits. The high table on the dais is filled with distinguished guests. Your lord presides in the center, dressed in his formal finery, the lady by his side in a gown of deep green velvet. On either side of them are tonight's honored visitors, 2 neighboring lords and their wives, here perhaps to discuss alliances or trade, a silver-haired duchess, who is the lady's cousin, and notably a foreign dignitary, the ambassador from a far-off kingdom, identifiable by his exotic fur-trimmed robe and the small retinue of similarly attired men at the secondary tables. The hall is packed. Lesser nobles, knights, and ladies fill the trestle tables below, along with the household's officers and companions. Music from a small troupe of musicians stationed in the gallery above the hall floats through the air, a gentle melody of lute, harp, and flute, providing a backdrop of festivity. You slip in, blending at first with servants who hustle by carrying wine jugs and heaped platters. Your plan is to make your appearance part of the entertainment, not just another servant scurrying about. You wait for an opportune moment to reveal yourself cleverly. It comes soon. A footman bringing in a towering meat pie accidentally bumps a chair, and a brief hush and laughter ripple as he steadies himself. Seizing the moment, you leap forward with a loud, exaggerated whisper that carries across the nearest tables. Careful, the pie nearly made its own escape. Laughter rises and eyes turn toward you. With a mock sneaky gait, you tiptoe into fuller view, as if trying not to disturb, which of course draws attention. You wear a different motley tonight, one half bright blue, one half vivid red, and on your head a tricolor cap with 3 points, each adorned with a tiny bell that jingles brightly. You must look like a harlequin phantom materializing from the shadows. A cheer goes up from some of the younger guests who have been eagerly awaiting the fool's antics. A few servants grin, and some of the noblewomen smile behind their goblets. Your lord catches sight of you and gives a subtle nod and grin, silently granting permission for you to work your magic on the gathering. You begin by weaving among the tables, a few light skipping steps to announce your presence, bells merrily creating a playful tune of their own. "Good evening, fair gentles and friends," you proclaim, doffing your cap grandly. "I see the hall is bright, the food ample, and the company most illustrious. Why, I feel I've wandered into heaven's banquet by mistake. I hope I'm not the only fool here tonight." A roar of chuckles answers you. "If you are, then we're all fools for laughing," quips a jovial knight, slapping the table. You wag a finger in faux admonishment. "Oh no, good sir, don't admit that too loudly, or they'll start charging us all admission for this fine entertainment we provide." With that, you smoothly pivot to the high table, raising your voice slightly to address the guests of honor. "My lords and ladies, honored guests from far lands, welcome. As humble court fool, I extend the warmest greeting, much like the warmth of the soup, but far less likely to burn your tongue." There's polite laughter, and you see the foreign ambassador's translator murmuring in his ear, likely explaining the jest. The ambassador, a bearded man with a serious face, breaks into a smile and nods at you, raising his cup in acknowledgement. The feast continues, and you ebb and flow with it. You choose your moments, a quip here when conversation lulls, a physical gag there between courses. At one point, as servants clear the fish course and bring in roasted game, you notice one portly baron at the high table, patting his belly, looking already full. You sidle up near him and announce with an exaggerated confidential tone, "Your lordship, careful, one more bite, and I fear we'll have to roll you out of the hall like a barrel." The baron, fortunately a man who enjoys a joke even at his own expense, guffaws loudest of all and slaps his ample stomach. "Better a full barrel than an empty one, fool," he retorts. You bow deeply. "Wisely spoken, my lord, and more wine to the full barrels then." The timing is perfect as the servant refills goblets and toasts are raised amid broad grins. Now and then, you let the musicians have the floor while the courtiers speak among themselves as they eat. During these times, you catch your breath at the margins, dabbing sweat from your brow. The hall is hot with bodies and fires. Beneath your motley, your shirt clings to your back. Performing in such a bustling environment is a bit like dancing on coals. You must keep moving lightly or risk getting singed by attention waning or turning sour. So far, so good. The mood is buoyant, conversation loud and cheerful. When the main meats are consumed and the meal drifts toward sweet dishes and spiced wine, you prepare for a larger act, the song you've practiced. A few guests begin clamoring. "A song! Sing us something, fool!" You see your lord smile and gesture encouragingly. You fetch your lute from where you left it propped discreetly against a pillar. Striding to the center of the hall, you strum a bold chord to hush the remaining chatter. "My lords and ladies," you call out, projecting your voice, "with your kind permission, I'll regale you with a little tale of a rather cunning guest at a feast. A beastly guest, one might say." Some eyebrows lift in curiosity, and you launch into the song of the fox at the feast. Your fingers dance over the lute strings, finding the merry lilting tune you practiced. Your voice rings out clear. On a night of frolic under moon's sly beam, a fox crept forth with a daring scheme. He donned a cape of purple and gold to sneak in a banquet among barons bold. You stroll between tables as you sing, making eye contact with listeners, drawing them in. Your voice shifts in tone to play the different characters of the song. Sly for the fox, gruff for the fooled hounds, high and indignant for the hen he dances with. Laughter punctuates each verse, especially when you describe the fox gulping down pies and outwitting the dull yard dogs. Those in the know catch the gentle satire. The hound that slept at his post might draw a knowing glance at Sir Baldwin, the steward who earlier was caught napping after lunch. He chuckles wryly. The peacock vain who preened all night earns a titter from ladies who look toward a foppish courtier known for his vanity. He smiles, perhaps oblivious, or pretending not to notice it's him. By the time you reach the final verse, where the fox, belly full and feet sore from dancing, sneaks away just as dawn breaks, the whole hall is clapping along or tapping their feet. He left with the morning, no wiser were they, that a fox ate and danced in their hall that day. So heed this small lesson, when feasting in plush, even slyest of guests can vanish in a rush. You finish with a flourishing strum and a deep bow. The hall erupts in applause and cheers. Amid the din, you catch sight of the lord's lady, clapping delightedly, the ambassador chuckling as the translator recaps the last clever line, and even the serious steward, Sir Baldwin, giving you an approving nod. The success of the song sends a warm flush of pride through you. There is no thrill quite like charming an entire roomful of people, high and low alike, and hearing their appreciation. In these moments you feel almost weightless, as if the laughter lifts you above the everyday cares. "Encore, encore," shout a few of the younger guests. "Bravissimo," calls the Duchess' cousin. You grin and hold up your hands, breathing a little fast from the exertion. "Ah, I fear if I sing too well, the musicians upstairs will toss me out for stealing their thunder." Light laughter follows. Instead, perhaps a bit of tumbling to aid digestion. Immediately a circle clears in the center of the hall as guests scoot benches back to give you room. A couple of knights drum the table in anticipation. You remove your lute and set it safely aside. Then you kick off your shoes. Performing acrobatics is easier, barefoot on the cool stone, and it adds comedic effect to do it unexpectedly. You roll up your motley sleeves and wiggle your toes exaggeratedly. Behold, even my feet are jesters tonight. See how they long to caper. With that, you spring into motion. First, a simple cartwheel to test the grip of the floor. The rushes underfoot slip a little, but you manage. Next, you perform a series of quick low flips, essentially handsprings, that draw ooze from the onlookers. Bells jingle madly as you flip head over heels. On the last one, you purposely over-rotate and land on your rear with a comic flail, legs splayed out. The hall bursts into laughter, thinking you've fallen by accident. You bounce up immediately, hands on hips, and chide your own feet. Naughty feet. They sometimes take a joke too far. This self-deprecation elicits affectionate applause. Your breath comes a bit heavy now. Perhaps you pushed that last flip more than intended, and your muscles protest, but adrenaline carries you forward. You spy on a sideboard a prop that could enhance the next gag, an empty wooden wine barrel used earlier to bring in ale. You roll it to the center. Ladies and gents, behold as I defy both dignity and common sense, you announce. You place the barrel and step atop it, starting to roll it with your feet, balancing precariously. It's a bit of a risky stunt. You tried it in the courtyard a few times, but you keep your core steady and move the barrel back and forth. The audience gasps and claps to see you, arms out, teetering on the rolling barrel. Once you have momentum, you even bow while on it, then intentionally let it slip out from under you. You jump off at the last moment, landing on your feet while the barrel rolls away and gently bumps into a table leg, harmless. You yourself tumble to your knees and throw up your arms triumphantly, as if that were the plan all along. The guests roar with approval, impressed and amused. They call for more, but you sense that it's wise to leave them wanting rather than risk a true accident by pushing your limits. You decide to transition to something interactive now, engaging directly with individuals. This also gives you a chance to catch your breath. You make a circuit of the tables, catching your breath while bantering with diners. At one table, you slide next to a pretty young noblewoman and produce, seemingly from thin air, the rose petal you pocketed earlier, now a bit crumpled, but still pink. "Milady," you say softly, presenting it pinched between finger and thumb. Even the flowers stand amazed by your beauty. See how this rose lost its blush to you. She giggles and accepts the petal, and her husband laughs appreciatively, tossing you a coin for the gallantry. You catch the coin mid-air with a snap and tuck it away with a wink. At another cluster, you perform the classic cups and pea trick for a trio of squires. Using 3 inverted goblets and a dried pea, you shuffle and swap with dizzying speed on a cleared section of table, then let them guess where the pea lies. They point to the left cup. You lift it, no pea. Right cup, no pea. The middle, also empty. You reveal the pea mysteriously stuck on the back of your hand, and the onlookers hoot in good humor. One young squire is so baffled, he insists you must be a sorcerer, to which you reply solemnly, "Shh, don't tell the bishop. He'll have me exorcised before dessert." The laughter that follows has a conspiratorial warmth, as if everyone delights in the gentle irreverence of laughing behind the bishop's back. All is going swimmingly, but as with any performance, there are undercurrents to mind. As you pass near one corner, you notice a pair of knights who have been less amused. One is Sir Roderick, a stalwart, humorless man nursing a cup of wine. He's known to be pious and not particularly fond of fools. Beside him is a younger, somewhat inebriated noble, Lord Edwin, the son of one of the visiting lords. Edwin has had perhaps one drink too many. His cheeks are flushed and his eyes a little wild. You recall that earlier in the night, you gently teased him for spilling sauce on his doublet, comparing the stain's shape to a map of some undiscovered kingdom of gluttony. The hall laughed, and he forced a chuckle then. But now his gaze as he watches you holds a glint of mischief, or malice, it's hard to tell. As you come near, Lord Edwin calls out loudly, "Fool, over here." His tone cuts through the surrounding chatter, quieting a few nearby conversations. You turn with your ever-present smile. "Yes, my lord?" He waves a half-empty wine goblet. "I have a challenge for you." You approach, heart rate quickening slightly. You've seen this scenario. A drunk young noble looking to sport with the fool can turn poor quickly if not handled adroitly. Edwin stands unsteady. He's a head taller than you and perhaps thinks that alone gives him authority. They say a fool's tongue is nimble. Let's see if your feet are as well. Dance for us, fool. He snaps his fingers and points to the space in front of his table, as if commanding a trained animal. Around him a hush takes hold, laughter dying out uncertainly in that section of the hall. Sir Roderick clears his throat. Edwin, perhaps he's entertained enough. But Edwin waves him off, not noticing the tension. "No, I want to see him dance a jig. Come now, caper." His words have the slur of entitlement. A familiar tight knot forms in your gut. It's humiliation he's after, not entertainment. But you cannot outright refuse. That could be seen as insubordination and insult. And so you do what you must, turn it with humor. You bow extravagantly low, one arm sweeping out. "A jig, my lord?" "With pleasure. In fact, I shall teach you one, for I see you're eager to dance yourself." A few people titter, and Edwin blinks, processing. You launch before he can object. Grabbing his free hand lightly, you place your marat in it like a dancing partner. "Here, take my lady in hand." You refer to the bauble and follow my lead. There's laughter as the tipsy noble finds himself holding your puppet. Without missing a beat, you begin a lively jig step, kicking and hopping. Out of instinct or mirth, a fiddler in the musician's gallery picks up the cue and strikes a quick reel. And to the roaring delight of onlookers, you compel Lord Edwin into a brief, clumsy dance. He stumbles at first, but you exaggerate your own moves to cover his awkwardness, all while calling out jovially, "Left foot here, right foot there. Mind the rushes. Oh, splendid, my lord, splendid." The sight of the flushed young man inadvertently bouncing the bauble in time, as if it were his dainty partner, sets the hall in stitches. Edwin's initial impulse to embarrass you is turned upside down. He's become part of the joke, but in a way where the laughter is not cruel, more joyous and inclusive. Even he, dizzy and breathless, breaks into a grin by the end of the impromptu jig, perhaps not fully grasping how deftly you deflected his challenge. When the music stops, he plops back onto the bench, handing your marat back. "You dance better than you drink, my lord." You quip quietly to him with a friendly pat on his shoulder. He only laughs and nods, reaching for his cup in good humor now. Crisis averted. However, not all such encounters end so amiably. Sir Roderick, still seated and more sober, gives you a cold glance as you depart. You sense he disapproved either of your making a noble look silly, or perhaps of the entire exchange. There's nothing to be done about him. Some people will never appreciate the fool. You move on, focusing on those willing to laugh. By now, the feast is winding down. Dessert wafers and mulled wine have been served. Bellies are full. A comfortable languor falls over the guests. The musicians play a gentle tune, and conversation has softened to murmurs. You yourself feel the fatigue in your limbs. The flips, dancing, and constant motion have taken their toll. A sheen of sweat coats your skin under your clothes, but you maintain your energy a little longer. The end of the night is near, and you have one last role to play, the gentle fool, easing the company from revelry to restfulness. With a light chime of your bells, you approach the high table one more time. There's a tradition in some courts that the fool ends the evening with a final quip or a wish of good night. You decide a short, whimsical toast will be fitting. Climbing the dais, you gently tap a spoon against a wine goblet to draw attention. The remaining talk dies down, and all eyes turn to you. In a mellow, warm voice, quieter than your boisterous earlier tone, you speak, "My lords, ladies, and honored guests. The hour grows late, and even the candles seem to yawn. Indeed, some flames flicker low as oil and wax near spent. Allow your humble fool to bid you a fond good night with a tiny wish. May all your dreams be as sweet as tonight's pudding, and none of your thoughts as heavy as tonight's roast." That earns a round of chuckles and a few playful groans from the well-stuffed. You continue, voice soft and sincere, "If any belly aches, let it be only from laughter, and should a sly fox creep into your kitchens, may he wash the dishes before he departs." Laughter again, recalling your song. You finally raise your hands in a theatrical blessing pose, bells softly jingling with the movement. "Thank you for your kind attention to my antics. It has been my honor to be your fool. Good night, and joy be with you all." A gentle applause follows, along with lifted cups and voices echoing, "Good night, fool." Well done. Your lord meets your eyes and gives you a deep nod of appreciation, which you return with a bow. In that moment, bathed in the golden light of the hall, you feel a swelling of contentment. You have done your job. More than that, you've brought joy, however fleeting, to these people. The highs of performance and the adulation warm you from within. As the assembly breaks up, guests filing out to their chambers or to awaiting carriages beyond the gate, you step aside out of the flow. You lean against a pillar, body suddenly heavy now that the adrenaline is ebbing. Your tunic clings damp under your arms. A servant offers you a cup of watered wine, and you take it gratefully, sipping to soothe your parched throat. The tart sweet liquid is refreshing. Master Osric, the hound keeper, passes by heading out and claps you on the shoulder, whispering, "Fine show tonight." One of the stable boys gives you a thumbs up shyly. Even the steward, on his way out with some account books under his arm, pauses and says quietly, "You outdid yourself," before briskly continuing. These small acknowledgments from the working folk please you greatly. Their laughter was perhaps the most sincere. The foreign ambassador, guided by his translator, surprisingly detours toward you. Through the translator he conveys, "His Excellency thanks the fool for an evening of delightful entertainment and offers this token." The ambassador himself smiles and presses something into your hand, a small brooch, likely of modest but real silver, depicting a tiny jester figure with bells on its cap and little garnet chips for eyes. It might be something he had prepared as a diplomatic gift to amuse, but still it is given to you, and you are genuinely touched. You bow deeply to him, summoning a few of his native words you picked up earlier. "Merci, monseigneur." He inclines his head and departs with his entourage. You examine the brooch as the hall empties around you. It's a whimsical little piece, a jester in mid-leap. What a curious token of fate, a jester receiving a jester trinket. It glints in the dying candlelight as you turn it over. You fasten it to your motley's breast for now, a rare bit of finery on your patchwork self. Finally, the hall is nearly empty save for servants beginning the cleanup, collecting dropped scraps to take to the kitchens, extinguishing some candles, stacking benches. The musicians have gone. Their corner is silent. A profound stillness, after so much noise, slowly reasserts itself in the great room. It's like the hush after a storm. You stand amidst it, feeling suddenly alone in that vast space that earlier brimmed with camaraderie and mirth. Your shoulders slump a little. The energy that kept you aloft seeps out through your feet, leaving your body lidden and spent. You become aware of a soreness in your knee, likely from that barrel stunt or the earlier tumbling, and a tender spot on your back where you landed a bit hard in your fake fall. Small prices to pay, you think, but they remind you that you are flesh and blood, not some tireless spirit of mirth. Clutching your lute and gathering any props you scattered, you retrieve a stray juggling ball from under a table and pick up your trusty marotte from the chair where Lord Edwin dropped it. You prepare to leave the hall. As you turn, you notice something on the floor near where the high table was, a fine silk handkerchief embroidered with the lady's crest. Likely the lord's wife dropped it. You stoop and pick it up. It's delicate and carries a faint scent of rosewater. You'll return it to her tomorrow via her maid, but for now you slip it carefully into your pocket to keep it safe. A fine piece of fabric like that, even as a lost scrap, would be a treasure in your humble possessions. But you wouldn't steal. The lady has been kind to you. You recall how warmly she laughed tonight. Leaving the hall, you head not to your chamber immediately, but to the kitchens. There, as you expected, the staff are winding down their operations. Big cauldrons are being covered, leftovers sorted. The chief cook sees you and waves you in. Come, fool, you must be starving. We saved a bit for you. On a wooden platter she's kept some choice morsels, a slice of cold roast goose, a hunk of cheese, a heel of bread, and even a small bowl of the sweet custard from dessert. Your eyes light up. After performing on your feet all evening, you are indeed ravenous. Bless you, good mother, you say warmly. You often call her mother as a jesting courtesy, since she fusses over everyone like a hen with her chicks. You sit on a stool by the warm hearth, and as the last of the scullions scrub pots around you, you tuck into the food. It's delicious even cold, the goose's rich, gamey flavor, the sharp tang of cheese. The bread is a bit dry, but you sop it in the custard, relishing the honey sweet and spice. Each bite is heaven to your empty stomach. The cook sits briefly across from you, kneading her own aching feet. She asks about the mood and gossip of the feast, and you share a few tame highlights, making her chuckle, especially about the fox song and the baron's barrel belly. She in turn tells you how one kitchen boy accidentally spilled pepper into the pudding batter and had to remake it. Small dramas of her domain, which you listen to with a smile. There's camaraderie here. With the servants you don't have to maintain any pretense, except perhaps an affable one. To them you're part of the household machinery, just like they are, albeit with a stranger duty. Soon enough you finish the last crumb and lick a bit of honey from your thumb. Fatigue is draping over you heavily now, like a cloak that grows weightier by the minute. You thank the cook profusely and bid the kitchen staff good night. A few wave or nod kindly as you depart. The corridors of the castle are quiet at this late hour. Most torches have been doused, leaving only faint light from spaced wall sconces. You carry a small oil lamp the cook gave you to guide your way. The stone halls that earlier rang with life now feel almost sepulchral, every footstep of yours echoing. Your bells jingle softly with each step, but even they sound sleepy, muted. At your chamber door, you fish out the little iron key on its thong around your neck and unlock it. Pushing the door open, you enter your sanctuary of solitude once again. The familiar scent of your small room greets you, a mixture of old wool, the faint waxy smell of a burnt-down candle, and something of yourself lived in. You set the lamp down on your table and light the stump of your tallow candle from its flame, bathing the room in a gentle glow. The thin light makes the shadows of the donkey ears on your hood dance on the wall. With a long exhale, you begin to undress. Off comes the jester's cap, heavy now with the accumulated sweat of the night. You toss it onto the chest, where it lands in a jangle. You run a hand through your damp hair, scalp grateful to be free of the tight hood. Next you unlace the motley doublet, fumbling a bit with trembling tired fingers, and peel it off. The linen shirt beneath is soaked at the armpits and neck, grimacing slightly at the chill of the air on your damp skin. You strip the shirt off as well. You pour a bit of water from your pitcher into the basin and wipe yourself down. A crude sponge bath, but it will do. The cool water is refreshing as you scrub the back of your neck and face, washing away the sheen of sweat and the faint sticky residues of spilled wine and gravy that speckle a performer by the end of a banquet. As you cleanse, you catch a glimpse of yourself in the little shard of mirror glass. Your face looks pale, except where the flush of exertion still lingers on your cheeks. The charcoal around your eyes is smudged, giving you a slightly haunted, hollow look. You wipe it away with the damp cloth, revealing the ordinary tired man beneath the painted accents of the fool. For a moment, you stare at your own eyes in the mirror shard. They look back, two brown eyes with a story behind them. There's a vulnerability there that no one in the hall would have seen during your performances. A question forms in your mind as you regard yourself. Are you happy? It comes unbidden, and you almost flinch at the directness of it. You don't answer yourself. You're not sure how to. Not here alone at nearly midnight. Instead, you busy yourself with the routine of bedtime. Your breeches and hose are next. You sit on the straw mattress to pull off the striped hose, massaging your calves where they've been snugly compressed all evening and worked hard. Small cramps flicker in your feet, and you rub them as well. You recall how you jumped and danced tonight. No wonder they ache. You'll likely have bruises and sore joints tomorrow. Ah, the wages of laughter, you murmur to yourself with a wry half-smile. From a hook, you retrieve a simple woolen nightshirt and slip it over your head. It's undyed, a bit scratchy, but warm. You feel immediate relief to be in loose, plain clothing. The motley, for all its color, can feel like a suit of armor at times, heavy with expectation. In your nightshirt, you're just yourself, a man like any other about to crawl into bed. Before you retire, you carefully take stock of the small treasures and tokens you gained tonight. From your pocket, you withdraw the coins tossed your way, a couple of silver pennies, and a shiny half-groat. You smile. These will more than cover the tailor's bill and then some. That thought eases one worry from your mind. You place the coins in a tiny wooden box where you keep your meager savings. There's not much in there. A few other coins, an old token of copper with a jester stamped on it, a lucky coin given by a fellow fool long ago, and a dried four-leaf clover you found once and pressed in a prayer book for luck. Into this box you also put the silver jester, brooch the ambassador gave you. It glimmers in the lamplight as if winking knowingly. It's valuable. You could sell it if ever in dire need. But part of you wants to keep it as a memento, a rare sign of honor given to a fool. Perhaps you will wear it hidden under your motley on some difficult day, a secret talisman to remind you that someone once saw worth in your capering. Next, you take out the lady's embroidered handkerchief. The fine stitching of her initials interwoven with a rose motif is lovely. You run your thumb over the threads, thinking how delicate and beautiful things surround the nobility as a matter of course. For you, an item like this is exotic. You fold it reverently and place it where you'll remember to deliver it tomorrow. A fine lady's kerchief does not belong in a fool's chest of trinkets. You know your place, and you won't forget to return it. Your marat, your dear bauble, you set on the table upright, leaning it against the wall. In the flicker of the candle, its painted face almost seems alive, grinning at you in quiet camaraderie. You meet its wooden eyes, and for a whimsical moment, you address it in a tired whisper. Well, old friend, we survived another one. The marat grins silently as always. You imagine it might answer, aye, and well played. You chuckle under your breath, talking to yourself and to your puppet. Maybe the bishop wasn't entirely wrong about folly leading one astray. But these quiet conversations keep you sane. Finally, you extinguish the little oil lamp, leaving just the candle to light the room. You kneel by your bedside for a moment, as is your habit, to say a brief prayer. Softly, so that only the walls and perhaps a listening angel can hear, you murmur, "Thank you, Lord, for seeing me through this day. For the laughter shared, I am grateful. If I overstepped or gave offense in my foolishness, forgive me. I only ever mean to bring joy, not hurt." Your mind flashes with images, the bishop's stern face, Lord Edwin's initial cruel command, Sir Roderick's disapproving glare. You add, whispering, "Heal any hearts I pricked unintentionally, and heal my own heart for the times it feels pricked too." The vulnerability of that admission tightens your throat a bit. But here alone on your knees, you can be honest. You continue in silence, moving your lips without sound, spilling the rest of your anxieties to the darkness. Thanks for the coins you earned, a hope that your place here remains secure, a fearful question of what would become of you if it doesn't. You pray for your family far away. You always do, imagining perhaps your little sister grown and safe somewhere. And lastly, you pray for strength to wake up tomorrow and don the motley again with a smile, to do it all once more. When you rise, you feel a small release, as if you've unburdened some of your soul into the hands of the divine. You slide into bed, blowing out the candle so as not to waste it. The darkness that envelops the room is soft and total, save for a faint silver line of moonlight sneaking through a crack in the shutter. Lying on your back on the straw-stuffed mattress, you let your body go heavy. The quiet is profound. What a contrast to the roar of laughter and music that still echo in your memory from hours before. Your ears ring slightly in the silence, a phantom tinninnabulation of bells perhaps, as if your body itself doesn't know how to stop performing yet. In the distance, you think you hear a last faint sound, perhaps a remaining guest down the corridor, laughing softly at some recollection from the feast, or it could be just a memory ringing in your ears. Either way, it fades and deep quiet settles. This is the time of day you feel most alone. In the darkness, nobody's eyes are on you. Nobody's expecting mirth. You're not required to grin or caper now. You can frown, sigh, even weep if you must, and no one will be the wiser. Often, you're too tired to weep, even if you feel the urge. Tonight, there's a slight sting behind your eyes, perhaps the release of tension. You let out a long breath you didn't realize you were holding. In the solitude, thoughts and questions swirl up from the corners of your mind, like bats in a belfry. You wonder, as you sometimes do, how long can this life go on? What happens when age stiffens your limbs, or when one day your joke falls flat at the wrong moment and the Lord's favor cools? Jesters seldom have pensions or lands to retire to. Some, you've heard, end up destitute, begging on the same streets where they once paraded in finery. Will that be you in a decade or two? The idea terrifies and saddens you. You try to push it away, focusing instead on small positives. Tonight was a success. You are secure for now. You have a roof over you this night, and likely many nights to come if fortune is kind. Your hand unconsciously reaches to your chest, feeling the spot where the ambassador's brooch had been pinned. Now it's safely in the box, but you remember its weight. An outsider from another land valued your skill enough to gift you a token. It strikes you as both heartening and ironic. Sometimes strangers see the worth that those close to you take for granted. Will any record of that moment exist? Likely not. In the ambassador's report to his king, he might note the successful banquet, perhaps mention the hospitality, but a fool's performance would be a footnote at best. You think of the chroniclers and how they rarely name people like you. The great lords and events get recorded for posterity, while the jester's quips vanish into the air once heard. If a chronicle described this night, it might say, on the feast of St. Michael, there was much mirth at table, and the fool of the castle entertained the company. The fool of the castle, not even your name, just your role. Indeed, you recall an older tale, how the English kings Edward, long ago, called every one of their fools Robert generically, regardless of each man's real name. A shiver goes through you at that anecdote. To be seen so interchangeably, as if one fool is as good as another, nameless, faceless except for a painted grin, it's a harsh reminder that in the eyes of many, you are an instrument, not an individual. Your hand now finds the small scar at your side, a thin line from years ago when a drunken guard once cut you with a dagger during a scuffle. He thought you'd insulted him. Truly, you'd just parroted something he himself said to laugh at his own drunkenness. You trace the scar and reflect on how every fool bears unseen wounds. Wounds in flesh, wounds in heart. They heal, but they also remain as quiet testaments to the dangers of your path. In the darkness, a tear finally forms and slips down your cheek, surprising you with its warmth. Perhaps it's just exhaustion breaking through. You let it roll into your hair by your temple. There's no audience here, no need to brush it away quickly. A quiet sob even rises in your chest, but you stifle it, out of habit maybe, from years of swallowing pain. Instead, you breathe slowly and evenly, focusing on the faint glow of moon through the shutter and the sound of your own heartbeat. The silence now is almost absolute. Only the hum of your thoughts disturbs it. It's at once peaceful and heavy. This silence is the other side of your life's coin, the flip side of all the laughter, for all the jests and noise you conjure each day. At the end of it, you return to an emptiness that demands to be felt. But within the silence, there is something else too, a strange sense of solace. The world has quieted enough that you can feel the presence of yourself. Not the fool, not the persona, just the human beneath. And that human is weary, yes, and lonely perhaps, but he is alive and has lived another day, doing what he uniquely can do. Your breathing slows. The tightness in your muscles begins to ease in the comfort of your simple bed. In the distance, you think you hear the castle's clock bells softly toll the midnight hour, the sound muffled by thick walls. You do not stir. You are already far on the road of dreams, where perhaps you can simply walk peacefully without need to perform. As you drift, faint wisps of dreams come. Perhaps you dream of juggling stars that turn into fireflies, of a great hall where everyone else wears motley and you alone wear a crown. What an absurd reversal, and the distant sound of a fox's laughter echoing in a moonlit wood. These images flit by gently, without the sharp edges of waking anxiety. Beyond your little room, the castle slumbers. Guards pace on the walls. A hound bays once in its sleep. An owl hoots from a nearby oak. But none of that disturbs you. In this small chamber, the fool lies asleep, untroubled for a few precious hours by the weight of jest or judgment. The sorrow that crept at the edges of your mind has ebbed for now, soothed by darkness and rest, and so the night deepens, silent and soft. In the morning, with the sun's return, you will put on your colorful guise once more, tie on your bells, and awaken the halls with jests and cheer. That is tomorrow's task. For now, in this quiet and dream-filled darkness, you have earned your rest. Sleep well, dear fool. In the silence behind the laughs, you have found a moment of peace.